mic? Okay. Thank you everyone for coming back. Hope you had a lekker lunch. We are joined now with Mirthe Berentsen, who is a writer and recently was in residence in New York at Kings County Hospital within the mental health unit. And if any one of you has been to a New York hospital, you'll understand what a kind of brutal and desperate place it can be. And Mirthe spent a lot of time working amongst the mental health patients in this hospital as a writer in residence. So what exactly that means and entails, we're going to talk about in just a moment. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I was wondering if we could start with just talking about your experience at the residency program.
I would love to. So the residency is a project of a Dutch organization. It's called Beautiful Distress. They started in 2014 because they wanted to break down stigmas around mental health by enabling a conversation about mental health issues through arts and literature. Actually, I was the first writer in residence, so it was a bit of a tryout. Actually, also, there will be a picture showing behind us. It's just a loop of sort of random pictures I made over the months at the hospital. You won't see any of the patients, clients, customers, whatever word you prefer, like up close. So it's a lot of selfies. I'm not a narcissist, but I'm not allowed, I wasn't allowed without a waiver to. Anyway, long story. You won't see people up close. So, yeah, if there's questions about the pictures later, you can always ask. So the residency, I stayed there for 4 months. Actually, my last day was last Friday. Monday, this Monday. And it's been a really, really interesting, very intense experience. It's in, I don't know, who of you knows Brooklyn, New York well? Anyway, the hospital is located in between Leverett Garden and Brownsville, which is a neighborhood that struggles a lot with a lot of social structures, like a lot of homelessness, a lot of people don't have jobs, no access to healthcare. So this hospital, Kings County, is a state-run hospital, which means a lot of things. That it's accessible to everyone. In the city of New York, allows everyone that is in need of help to get help, which is unique within the US. Well, that's about the location. Sorry, what else was your question?
I'm just wondering also how you function as a writer. Like, what were your surroundings like?
Right. Well, it's interesting. I had sort of vision in mind that I was working on a book on madness and language before I started this residency. That's also why I got the residency. And I had this sort of vision that I would like talk to people, and then during the afternoon I would write chapter after chapter. Literally, I don't wrote any chapter, which I sort of regret, but it's my daily life consisted a lot about going to all sorts of training, like active shooter training, what to do if someone comes in with a gun, what to do if someone attacks you, what to do if someone, whatever, throws feces on you. So there were I had to go through all these sorts of trainings, like how to talk to people that are in the middle of psychosis. How do you? Basically, my week was a lot of trainings, and I would go to all the group therapies to get to know people. So group therapies would be music, poetry, creative writing, painting. So I mostly spent my time in a part of the hospital which was called PHP, which is the Partial Hospitalization Program, which is basically an amazing program that is there for people that are in very desperate need of structure, but they're not inpatients. So basically there's a difference between inpatients and outpatients, like I think almost in every mental hospital in the world. So it's people that go like on a day therapy they come in and out, literally. Then there's people that stay there all for a few weeks in a row, just until they are a little bit more stable. The PhD program was part of the day therapy program. So people would come in at 9 and leave around 3 to 4. And within the 6-7 hours, you could choose whatever option there was given that day. So, like I said, writing, music, but then there's music like expressional music, there's rap, then there's hip-hop, then there's classical. So it's a very wide, like, diverse program.
Did you find that the institutionalization of life for these patients was positive? Because I think that oftentimes when you kind of become institutionalized, it can be a very violent experience in transition.
Totally. I think there's not one answer to that question. I think a lot of people that I've met, they struggled the most with isolation and marginalization in terms of their sexual orientation, race, like all sorts of like social issues, basically. What the program did is, like, especially, I'm just talking about this PhD program, because I cannot, I think, but like I'm not 100%, like, don't quote me on this. I think the mental health department of this hospital is helping like 15,000 people a month. So that's not only people that are internally there, but also people like getting medication. What I do think that, I don't know, there's like the residive, what's it called? Like is pretty high. So a lot of people are doing a little bit better, but because there's no social backup, they end back in the streets, or they still don't have a job, and they feel anxious or depressed again, so they come back in. So there is this danger of the sort of like the institutional loop, so to say. Overall, I think a lot of the people that I met at this, let's say this creative program, that for them the biggest challenge was in their daily life to get some sort of organization and some sort of structure. And the hospital provided that by saying you need to be there at 9, and there was a reward every week that if someone would be on time all the time or met all the appointments, you would get some sort of prize, which could be gloves or a notebook or like small beneficial things. Yeah.
As someone who is Dutch and has spent a lot of time in the United States, how would you kind of compare the two healthcare systems and the kind of sense of social responsibility that differ between these two countries?
I think in general, like, so this hospital in Kings County is also a different sort of, it's not an example for all hospitals in New York or all hospitals in the US. Kings County is, or that area, the geographical location of the hospital is actually in the midst of, like, where a lot of migrants from the West Indies came from. So it's beside all the social struggle, there's a lot of religious tension. Even like being gay would mean for a lot of the people that I met that they would be expelled from their community, from their church, from school, and I met a lot of, actually, I don't know why, but somehow there's a lot of people that are dealing with gender issues. So I met this boy, and he said, or he told me, like, after months and months of talking to him, he was not even a patient anymore. We just would meet on a regular basis, and he said, I've never told this to anyone, but I feel I'm actually a woman, like, inside of me. And he thought he was literally the only person who felt that way. And it's the sort of weird understanding that there's a whole narrative about, like, I gave him words that he never heard about, like gender or... and I do think that sort of, in terms of differentiation between Holland and the US, that there is much more sort of knowledge in Holland like even if you grew up in a little village in the Achterhoek, like I did, I would still know about sort of biased. You have a question? No? Okay. Well, yeah, it's almost too big of a question. Like the whole social structure behind the idea of healthcare is so different here than I think in America it's much more survival mode, like healthcare survival. I think here it's that's partially true, but it's much more accessible for everyone. So it's a very long, like the comparative aspect of these two countries. We'll go too deep in. I don't know. I don't want to go into that too much.
Well, just in terms of your daily work, so you had an office at this hospital,
right? And
then you would also meet with patients on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Is that going to inform your writing somehow?
Right. So I remember one of my first days. I asked like the supervisor there, like, so what do I do? Because I was the only artist in residence, so it's also. Well, basically no one really gives a shit if you're there or if you're not there, because there's not a program. So someone said, like, yeah, you just have to hijack our daily routine and then try to meet people. So also in my first weeks, I was completely lost, which I think, like thinking in retrospective, it was interesting because I think I felt as lost in a way as a lot of other people that came in first for their day therapy. They were like, wait, so there's already a coexisting group, and how do I fit in or do I not fit in? So you would just sit next to someone at lunch that you think, oh, nice eyes, or whatever, like a sort of weird bias. And so during the weeks, I would like get to know people a little bit. And I think an important aspect was of, like what you talked about a little bit earlier, that there was no way that by entering the hospital, the moment I would step foot into the hospital, I would lose all my sort of preassumptions about the world or how things exist or coexist. Because there's how to say, like, if I would have like, oh, I'm going to write this up and be like sort of pretentious art writer person, I would never like be honest to myself and be honest to all the people working in there and being in there. So I would just go like join the group therapies, talk about my problems, talk about my family to a certain extent. Like I won't end up crying all the time or whatever, but like being open and like actually making a true connection with someone by sharing experiences of trauma or loss, I think was the only way for me to actually connect with people. And then when people were, what's the word in English? When they could go again, when they
released.
Yeah, but I thought release is so much a prison term. No. No. Okay. Well, when they were released, they like with a few people I'm still in very close contact with, and we would we would talk a lot about writing. Like I met this guy who's an amazing writer. That's also the guy that actually felt that inside he's a woman, and then because he struggles with that a lot, and it's also if he comes out to his family, they will put him on the street. He has nowhere to go. He doesn't have a job. So I think that's already a difference with Holland, that there would be some sort of backup, or there would be a social. He would get a uitkering, or there would probably be some sort of housing situation. In New York or in the US, or well, not to generalize it, at least for him, that's not an option. So coming out would mean homelessness, which is heartbreaking. And
what do you think about the kind of ethical position of residencies like this, kind of coming into a institution of marginalized people and using that as creative material?
Yeah. Well, I thought about this a lot because I thought about it's like even in my first few days there, I felt like I was literally the only white person, and there were 2 other white persons on the whole department, and they were doctors. So you get this really weird sort of power hierarchy struggle. But after a few weeks, I also felt that a lot of the people in there are mostly there because they've never been taken serious within the way that they feel, and like family or school or church community would always say like, oh, please behave, oh, please don't sing in the subway, oh, please don't do this, like, please fit in, please be normal. And I think the aspect of I would, how to say, like, for me as a writer, I'm very interested in the counter narrative, so to say, and in so to go back to what you were saying, I really felt that, and that's also what I heard back from a lot of the psychiatrists and the therapists, that the level of engagement that I know also previous residents had with a lot of the customers in there is one of actually wanting to understand and wanting to sort of celebrate that part of them that's always sort of like pushed away. So it's I think in general, like, maybe artists are more open to that aspect of like the non-functioning or the the binary way of thinking. To
offer a creative or an open space for that kind of self-presentation.
Right.
I think it's actually already time to open it for questions. I don't know who has the mic.
Hi. I just wanted to say that you don't call a trans woman a he, especially repeatedly. If you're not sure, try at least use they, because he is really violent, and you shouldn't do that, especially in front of the audience that's not educated and is gonna do the same afterwards.
So I think that the way in which Mirthe was referring to this person, they actually did go by he, and that was their preferred pronoun, and to gender them as she when they haven't come out as trans is not your decision.
You're saying that there was a boy who identified as a woman.
No, like, because he still refers to himself as a boy. He like, it's just that he told me in a very private like conversation that he like, I even asked him permission to talk about this case, that he just, well, I think like what Karen said, it's I don't really understand like your question or remark.
Then it's really important for you to frame in front of the audience that it was a specific case where the person was allowing you to do that, because cis people do that all the time when they say, when they refer to a trans person as wrong gender.
Well, but he doesn't, he doesn't see himself as a trans person.
But that's their own struggle. Like,
I know.
When you talk about it in front of people, you have a responsibility to put a disclaimer, because then people judge from this situation all other trans people.
I think I don't really know how to respond to this, because it is someone that identifies himself as a boy. He wants to be addressed like that. So it's.
I think, to be honest, like when we think about trans issues, for me, I think it's about autonomy and the self-choice of determining how you want to be referred to. And in this case, this person's preferred pronoun is he. And I appreciate your comment that there should be some sort of disclaimer and greater kind of sensitivity to the very specific context of this. But in this sense, she did not misgender this person.
It's not about what she did wrong, but it's about that there should be a disclaimer, and that's exactly
No,
the
I
point.
mean, I do agree
with you.
I
think we should
Let's not center it around a cis person.
No, but I do agree, like, we completely need to open up the conversation, and that's Thanks for your remark, and I will be even more careful in how I talk about this. But so, any other questions?
No, because the stream people are. I was just wondering, maybe along the lines of the previous question, or one of the previous questions. There's a large tradition of art therapy in psychiatric institutions, and often residencies kind of sit at the edge of that.
Right.
In how far did you feel that this residency kind of engaged with ideas of art therapy, and in a way, and how interested were you going into it in ideas of art therapy?
Yeah, it is also something that we didn't have time to talk about now, but I think it's wait. So if I understand your question correctly, you mean like how the residency engages with the art that's being made within the hospital, or? Well,
let's say there's a different kind of stated goal. Let's say if the focus of the residency is therapy, then that's a specific focus, which has to do with the welfare of the patients and let's say the creative or the creative outings of the patients.
Right.
On the other hand, an art residency is also a place for artists to work and to make work.
Right.
So it's kind of that tension.
Right. So I think that's a very interesting question, and it's also a good question because, like, also talking with previous artists that work there on, I think for me as a writer, it's also like I don't have an end product that's ready now at the end of the residency. I think for some other artists that work there, they work towards a painting or a series of pictures, which actually there was a big exhibition from this residency at the New Dakota in the school here until January. Like the body of work that comes out of like the residency or of the therapy is completely different. Somehow it's very often when I walk into a gallery, for example, I don't feel as much of a necessity of the work as I've very often felt within therapy. And that is like a lot of the work in there might not fit into like the stedelijk. But the necessity for someone dealing with mental health issues to sometimes express himself in a very different way, to maybe not cut yourself, but draw a bridge or whatever, like part of the therapy, was very healing, and it was very touching to see how much. Like a very simple drawing of a bridge, like basically 2 lines would mean for someone because it was a bridge to recovery or whatever. And does that answer your question?
Not entirely, but okay. I think maybe I'm also, by the way, if there's another question, just interrupt.
Yeah, maybe we can take one more quick question and then we have to wrap it up.
It's a very simple question. What did you write down?
Sorry,
what did you write down during the residency?
Well, it's all in here. I wrote a lot of short stories and poetry. Especially the poetry is something that I never really write. But within that context, I don't know. I felt more at ease with a sort of fragmented way of thinking and writing. So I did, that's basically what I did write.
Okay, thanks so much, Mirthe. We're going to move on and see Carolyn Lazard next.